Okay, it's 9:01, so let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathan Bricker, and I'm the chairman of the Arkansas District Export Council. I really appreciate you all joining us today. I hope that you walk away from this webinar with a little bit more confidence in your exporting abilities. And if you still have questions at the end of this webinar and you don't feel comfortable asking it here on this platform, I do invite you to reach out to us on our website at exportarkansas.org, and we'll be sure to follow up and reach out to you. We do want to be your strategic partner to help you grow your exports, which helps grow your bottom line. We don't know all the answers, but we can introduce you to someone who does. We are a community of connections within the exporting world. I would like to introduce you all to your moderator this morning, Rudy Ortiz. Rudy assists companies in a wide variety of business-related areas, as well as their international business and exporting needs and training. He teaches various export-related classes for the Arkansas District Export Council, as well as the Arkansas Economic Development Commission's Export Tech Training Program. He's a certified global business professional, as well as a U.S. Department of Commerce certified export and trade counselor. Rudy?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Ms. Heidi, if you can go to the next slide. The Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is the sponsor of this series of webinars pertaining to both trade and supply chain management. The mission of the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions is to maximize enterprise value for manufacturers through innovation, operational excellence, sustainability, and leadership development. Next slide. The Arkansas District Export Council is one of 60 district export councils throughout the United States, and we're charged with encouraging and supporting the export of goods and services that will strengthen individual companies, stimulate U.S. economic growth, and most importantly, create jobs. I want to remind everyone that if you have a question or comment, that you could please feel free to enter that question or comment in the questions panel that you see below. And the recordings will be available within 48 hours after this presentation. Our internet's a little slow today. In any case, I will introduce Mr. Martin Claessens. He's the Principal Commercial Service Officer who is headquartered in Toronto. And he's with the U.S. Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration at the U.S. Consulate General there in Toronto. And his contact information is on the screen right now, but we will also show it later on at the very end of the presentation. Very good. So Martin, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to you so that you can go ahead and tell us about doing business in Canada and seeking the opportunities that are there for us.
Great, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
As I get my presentation ready, I just want to say how happy I am and how privileged I feel today to be chatting with the group from Arkansas. You know, as someone who works at U.S. embassies overseas, you know, it's not often that we get to work with every single U.S. state. And as a boy from Illinois myself, I used to take a lot of road trips with the family. We'd pile into the van and go down to Lake of the Ozarks. So yeah, Arkansas has a special place in my heart. So it's good to be with you all. Up here in Canada, north of the border, things are going pretty well, and I hope I can give you some information today that you find useful. You know, Rudy and I are both here to help you out every step of the way as you seek more sales overseas. The whole point of my being here in Canada is to help you grow your exports to Canada so you can keep adding jobs back home. So it's great to be with you all today. I'm going to actually stop my incoming video for the presentation because my connection might be a little bit slow, and hopefully that will improve things. All right. Excuse me. So this is just a quick overview of what we'll be getting into today. Looks like a lot of info. Don't worry. I'll keep it quick, and I won't bore you too much. So don't worry. We'll get into the meat of things pretty quickly. But just a good overview of. I'll give you a little overview of the bilateral relationship. We'll talk about some market approaches, a few little tips and tricks that you need to know coming into Canada that you'll want to write down. And then, give you an idea of how we can help you up here north of the border. Just very briefly, I'm not going to do some kind of public like education here, but it's good to be reminded of how large the Canadian market is. It's the #1 export market for almost half the U.S. states. It's the second largest sized country in the world as far as geography. 38 million people live here. The US and Canada have the world's longest border, which is pretty incredible. We even have a border crossing that's in the middle of a library, if you can believe that. You walk through the library from the US to Canada. The capital is Ottawa, but the commercial capital here is in Toronto. And we'll get into later, but it is good to know that they have 2 official languages. They do speak a little French up north. I know you've probably all looked at a map before of Canada, and so maybe you find this a little silly, but it is important to kind of get an idea of how massive the country is in size, but then where the real population centers are. And this will become important as we go into the presentation, because you'll see that you probably need, if you're serious about the Canadian market, you'll probably need folks in different parts of Canada. You can't just hire somebody or have a rep or one sales channel to the Toronto region and expect to get sales out west in Edmonton, Calgary, or Vancouver. But you'll also notice that the population centers are very close to the US border. It's not just because of the temperatures getting a little warmer as you go south, but it's really, that's where the trade flow is as well. So the people flow north and south, the trade flows north and south. The trade does not flow as much east to west like it does in the United States. Just a little picture of the economy, massive economy up here. Why is that important to you? Well, this is a rich country. The Canadians have a lot of money to spend. They buy a lot of products from the US, and so that offers you an opportunity, right? Unemployment rate is pretty low. They've done a pretty good job of managing balancing the economy with the pandemic. They've been maybe a little more conservative compared to the US, but luckily the economy here is projected to grow quite a bit, almost 5% over the next year. So things haven't slowed down too much. It is important to know that while they have a dollar, it's a different dollar, and the currency fluctuations can impact you. Just a quick note, I'm not a political guy myself. I work for whoever the president is, so this isn't supposed to be a political slide, but the current 2 leaders are there of the 2 countries. The more important thing is that this is the most comprehensive and integrated trading relationship that the US has. $1.6 trillion in bilateral trade, which is pretty incredible. If just here in Toronto, if Ontario were a state, or if Ontario were a trading partner, it'd be in the top 4 overall in the world. So it just gives you an idea of how massive of a trading relationship this is. And investment as well. The US and US jobs, US manufacturing relies heavily on US investors coming south and opening up factories, which is something we do here as well. That's the investment. Just on the roadmap, we'll go a little bit into this roadmap. When President Biden came into office, the 2 leaders met, as is tradition. Usually the first meeting for a US president is with the Prime Minister of Canada. And they decided to sign this new roadmap. So we're working on 3 major pillars. Building Back Better, which is really about helping small businesses and promoting Select USA inward investment. Climate change ambitions, so we're doing a lot of work on small modular reactors, electric vehicles, smart grids, smart cities, and solar power. And then security and defense. So especially given what's going on in the world today, defense procurement and supply chain security are very, very important, and it's something we're working with Canada on very regularly. In fact, tomorrow we have a webinar with the government of Ontario to talk about the opportunities for the critical minerals and mining sector in Ontario. That's just a little overview of what's going on kind of at a high level. USMCA, of course, everybody knew about it. Everybody's kind of forgotten about it maybe, but you know, we still want to talk about it, and happy to take any of your questions. Really, we updated a 20-year-old agreement that was NAFTA. So I think it's a great thing. The North American market is just massive, so it's great that we have this agreement. I did see one question from one of you. Hopefully you're attending today. We got a question via email about free trade agreements and how you might still be subject to a lot of taxes or even duties. And that's true. I mean, I would say there's no such thing as truly free trade, unfortunately. And even though we have this free trade agreement, there still may be some barriers to trade for your products, but we're happy to help you navigate those. And if they're really real barriers to trade, we can also take them up in our next negotiations with the Canadian government. So now I'll just talk, a bit more practical about exporting to Canada. And obviously there's a lot of data on this slide, but the presentation, I believe, will be made available to you all. So this is kind of a nice thing to take home and study. These are really the top 10 merchandise export opportunities. These are real exports from the US to Canada. But by looking at where the flow is today, that's kind of the first place we look for opportunities. And we also look at where the trade flows are going, up or down. But yeah, these days we're doing a lot of work on nuclear reactors, small modular SMR, small modular reactors, and all the parts and supplies that go into that, vehicles. So while Canada does have a number of production plants for US OEMs, the trade back and forth is pretty massive. So US vehicle manufacturers and auto part suppliers have a really big market here.
Martin, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Obviously we see that 2017, just strictly as an example, electric machinery, 42 billion, and then in 2018 it grew up a little bit, and of course in 2019 it went down a bit, and then in 2020 it went down even further, and obviously those were all impacts pertaining to COVID. What are we seeing in terms of 2021? I know that the numbers are not official yet, but do you have a sense whether in 2021 they went up or stayed the same, and in 22 how's that going?
Yeah, so they are going back up, and you're right that and it's a great question. Thanks. The pandemic really put a damper on things. Luckily, because we have this important relationship, the border never closed for goods, right? Immediately, truckers and train operators were considered essential, and they never shut the border for goods trade. So, but obviously, both economies slowed way down. So the numbers came down, but we do think we're seeing early data that the numbers are going back up. So things are looking like they'll get back to a more normal level. So we still consider that these are the really good opportunity sectors. These are very large buckets of different products, and they're still our priority sectors for if you're a U.S. producer trying to export to Canada. Doesn't mean that these are the only ones, though. For those of you tuning in, we see all kinds of niche products come up here from the United States, and along with Rudy, we're happy to help you find the right partner overseas. Here's some more data, but I'm not going to go through all of this line by line. I think that'll be very boring. But this again is something you can take away if you want to take a screenshot, or you know, afterwards we can get you access to this presentation. Sorry, one second. So just to talk a little bit about the market approach, and this is more practical, I think, and hopefully more interesting than what I've been saying already. You know, a lot of American companies come up here and they expect it to be exactly the same, right? Well, Canada is just the 51st state or something like that. Well, that's not true. I mean, yes, Canada is a great partner, and this is a great economy, and everywhere you go, people speak English, maybe a little bit less in Quebec, but it's, you know, it's not exactly the same. The beauty is, yes, we have very similar culture, common language. The usual sales and contractual terms are the same or very similar to what you'd experience back home, which is great. So it is a very familiar market in some respects. But the market competitiveness is at the same level as the US, right? So whereas I'll use a former country that I was living in, you know, if you took your product to Colombia, let's say, to South America, maybe it would be unique to the market. If you're bringing it to Canada, there's, in all likelihood, it's probably that you have competitors up here already, right? So you face fierce competition. So it's just something good to know. You can't just come up here and expect instant sales. There's also some particularity on sales tax in Canada. So the sales tax applies to all sales, which is a disadvantage when selling from the US. But I'll get more into that in a minute. We do have a different geography and climate. And I know you're going to say, oh, that's silly. I know that. I looked at the map. I know it's way up north. But for some products, that's important to know. And for your sales and distribution, that's really important to know. It's a massive country, and it's very difficult to supply the whole country. And if you're making a product that has to withstand the weather, I mean, truly is a different market up north. You know, we have, I remember with the terrible situation in Texas, what they faced with some of their windmills, you know, malfunctioning when they got a massive snowstorm unexpectedly. You know, the ones that are made for Canada are obviously made a little differently and can withstand those types of temperatures, just as one example. The exchange rate, so I mentioned the exchange rate before, but it is very important to know that your products currently are more expensive than your customers because the US dollar is stronger than the Canadian dollar. So you face, you know, maybe about a 15% difficulty there to selling your product to a Canadian consumer if they can buy the same product from a Canadian manufacturer. It doesn't mean that you have no chance, though. Don't worry. I don't want to discourage you too badly. But also, if you plan to sell in Canadian dollars, for example, you'll want to make sure that you have a plan in place to hedge the currency fluctuations. Although they don't fluctuate drastically up and down. It's usually small movements up and down over time. A lot of it is related to the price of oil because Canada exports a lot of oil, if you can believe that. Then we'll go to market to the local market. What do I mean by that? Yeah, as I said before, distribution. So if you really want to get to the whole market, you need to have somebody in Toronto to cover kind of the center and the east, and then somewhere out west to cover the west at the very least. And to go back on taxes, the market to the local market, there is a program that I think a lot of you would be interested in that's called the non-resident importer program. And this actually allows, you know, U.S. exporters that want to be the importer of record on their products into Canada. You can set up this program, which will basically give you a big tax advantage for selling directly to consumers. We have more information on that program on our website, trade.gov, which I will put at the end of my presentation. But something kind of to take note on and look into, and I'm happy to, you know, have a call with any of you to explain how that works.
Martin, one of the things I'd like to comment on and really emphasize, you know, the Canadian market is similar, but that it isn't identical. And one of the things that I always tell people is that when it comes to international business, the best assumption that you can make is that it is different than the United States. And if you start off with that assumption, you're going to get into a lot less trouble that way. And the other thing that you mentioned a second ago is Canada is just a huge, huge country, and especially the way the trade is laid out. You know, the concept of having a distributor for the entire country is probably not a viable one, and so you will need to make efforts to find multiple distributors across the country.
Yeah, thank you for that. I fully agree. Another big difference I would say that really tends to shock a lot of, it doesn't shock, but it comes as a surprise for a lot of US companies that come up here, is that the Canadian business market, sort of the climate, is much more conservative as far as, you know, moving quickly compared to the US. The US, we're just a much more aggressive economy, and the, you know, businesses are way more aggressive. They're risk takers, more or less, right, in the US. But in Canada, they definitely are much more risk averse. So that can frustrate a lot of our US company clients, because sometimes they're just kind of waiting for someone to make a decision, waiting for the deal to happen. So deals can take quite a bit longer up north than they do in the USA. I'll just go to the next slide here. So a little bit on regulatory compliance. You know, a lot of products obviously have standards and regulations in the US. And I will just say, if they have them there, if there's a certain certification or license that you need to sell your product in the US, there probably is a very similar one that you need to get for Canada, but it won't be exactly the same. So some hoops that you'll have to jump through. Luckily, the degree of alignment of our standards and regulations is quite high. So sometimes if you're following like the UL standard, you could be good to go. But you know, be sure to check this before you enter the market, and we're happy to help you check that. If you're a service provider, like a professional engineer or welder, there are provincially licensed specialists. So in every province, you have a different license, which is pretty terrible for doing business, but that is what it is. And we recommend that, you know, these service providers make sure that they get the specific license for each province. A little bit about the bilingual labeling. It's something a lot of companies are surprised by, but as I said early in the presentation, the two national languages here are English and French. And so if you're selling something that's a consumer product, you know, that will be sold in stores, it has to be, the labeling has to be in both English and French. So, you know, if you go into a CVS or a Walgreens here, you'll see that every single label has both English and French on it. It's something kind of unique.
Martin, I wanted to go back to the work permits, because that's something that I've seen. You know, an American company has some sort of technology that the Canadians wish to buy, and the Americans are going to have to go and install the technology. Just as an example, they have to. The Americans would have to get some sort of special work permit to do work, the installation in this particular case, in Canada. Is that correct?
You know, I think it depends on the type of work. But yeah, it's true that you cannot just come up here and do highly technical work without the right permit. If you're coming up for just general business meetings, you do not need a special permit or a visa. But that's something, depending on the sector the company is in, we'd be happy to, you know, get the details and make sure that you're in compliance. Does that make sense? Okay. Can you still hear me? I just want to make
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
Okay. This is something that surprises a lot of people, but Canada, you know, a lot of countries now have anti-spam legislation, which is great for the consumer. but Canada's is actually one of the most draconian in the world, if you can believe it. Um, I'll just give you three things that you really have to be careful about. So if you're going to send any kind of electronic business message to a Canadian, potential Canadian customer, three things you need to know. You have to have the consent of the recipient before the message is sent to them. So think about that. You have to have their consent before you even send the message, which means in my line of work where we're doing business-to-business matchmaking, we have to call people first before we send them emails. You must have identifying information in all the commercial messages. Oh, that just means they can tell it's from you. And then there must be an obvious unsubscribe mechanism. But really that first point is the most important and why their law is quite draconian. You have to have the consent of the recipient before the message is sent. So you unfortunately you can't send out like these big marketing campaigns, by yourself. There are companies that can help you with that, and in fact, my office can help you with that if you're serious about the market. But yeah, you can't. Please don't spam people in Canada. You'd be violating the law, unfortunately. I wanted to talk a little about government procurement. And in fact, we have a government procurement webinar coming up. If you go to our website, you'll see it's in May. But I wanted to let you know, a lot of US companies don't realize that if they are bidding on government projects overseas, the US government can help be your advocate. So basically, if you're applying for some kind of public works project in Ontario or anywhere in Canada, you come to us first, and we'll have you fill out a quick application, and then we can go in. We could even send the ambassador in or whoever, and they can say, hey, I really think you need to buy this guy's product. So we'll use like the whole weight of the U.S. government to push for your product or your service to be chosen for that public project. It's a really valuable program, and it's of course free because you pay your taxes. Thank you. And we just want you to know about this so you're well aware. We go in and we push for small and large companies as long as it's 51% U.S. content. It just has to be made in the USA essentially, and we'll go in and push for your product. So don't forget about us when you go overseas. Just a little bit about my organization. We're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We have offices, as you can see on the screen, across Canada, not in every large city, but we're in some of the majors. And we each of our offices has a few local staff professionals who are here as our specialists, and they're the ones who can do business-to-business matchmaking for you. So essentially, you come to us, and well, this is our global reach too. So just so you know, we're not just in Canada; we're all over the world. And yeah, and in some markets that are even more difficult than Canada to get into. I'll give you an idea in this next few slides of what kinds of services we provide. And a lot of them are free. So market intelligence, which is on our website as well, trade.gov. We do market research. We can do initial market checks for you if you're curious about Canada but not sure how your product would land here. We can do background checks on companies if you're serious about signing a deal with someone, with a distributor. If you're not sure about them, as part of your due diligence, we can do a background check and give you a report. And then we put a lot of market intelligence online. So anytime there's a new opportunity we find out about, we put that on our website. Trade counseling. So this is where, everyday individual companies come to us. We set up phone calls or over email. We get on Microsoft Teams, and we help you enter the market from the most basic questions to the most advanced. Just like your deck, we're here to help you navigate those difficult waters and make sure that you stay in line with the law and the regulations, and help you find success. And that's why we're here. We want you to be able to make more money and add more jobs back in Arkansas. Here, our kind of, I would say our bread and butter really is business matchmaking. So, if you want to really enter the Canadian market, you probably need to find a good partner up here. And what we can do is set you up. We'll chat with you about who your ideal partner looks like, and then we set you up with a day or two of meetings. You fly in, or you can nowadays you can do a lot of this online. You meet with your potential partners, and decide who your partner is going to be. But this is really nice, tailored service. We charge a very small fee for this, in the hundreds of dollars, and it can really be beneficial for you entering any market overseas, including in Canada. We're also at a lot of the big trade shows. We do a lot of U.S. pavilions. So upcoming shows we have, there's a big energy show coming up in Calgary in June. That's going to be pretty massive. There's also this big tech conference coming up in Toronto, Collision Conference, where we'll have a good presence. So we'd love to have you up here.
Martin, I can't overemphasize how important the partner search and the Gold Key program is in terms of services to U.S. exporters. Imagine a country as large as Canada trying to go over there and finding the right person to do business with. I mean, it would be very, very risky. But in this particular case, the U.S. Commercial Services is doing a lot of the vetting of these companies. Once they understand your company and what you're looking for, they can identify potential partners and set up meetings. And in those areas that you have foreign languages involved, even in Quebec where they speak French, if it's required to have an interpreter, they can make them available as well. And so a lot of the DEC members have used both of these services, the Partner Search and the Gold Key services. And I will tell you that it is an absolute home run for any company trying to expand their exports into any foreign market, including Canada.
Well, thank you for that, and I agree. Having been in a lot of different markets around the world, there's no better use of your time and a few of your dollars. It's not a very expensive service, especially for small and medium-sized companies. And it really is the best way to enter a market, and you just will save yourself so many headaches and so much money compared to just trying to dive in by yourself.
Absolutely. And as it turns out, Martin, we have a question that perhaps this might be a good time to address it. The question is, on the non-resident importer program, when do you feel it's valuable for an organization to apply for this? And then he goes on to say, my company doesn't export a lot to Canada right now, but we are getting more customers.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I would encourage if you see that you're going to, if you're expecting your sales to increase and you're selling direct to the customer, then I think you should probably apply already. It's a pretty simple process, and if you connect the two of us, I'd be happy to send more information. We recently did a whole webinar on the topic, and so there are some technical hurdles and things like that, but it's a fairly easy process, and it really is the number one thing that my team pushes U.S. companies to do, because otherwise you're kind of selling at a disadvantage. You're paying the tax twice essentially, and so someone pays that, either your customer or you. So yeah, I'd be happy to give more information, and just to more fully answer the question for other other businesses on the line, I would say if you're just having a few sales here or there, then it's probably not something you need to worry about. But if you start to see that Canada is becoming a real market for you, you should probably apply.
Very good. And we're going to have Martin's contact information at the very end. You might take a picture of it so you don't have to try to write down very quickly. And contact Martin, and I'm sure that he'll be happy to help you with that.
I was going to put that there. There's our website, trade.gov/Canada. And then it's a lot of emails on there, but I'm in there somewhere in the middle, as you can see, under Toronto. I'll put this slide back up at the end though for you. I did want to talk very quickly just about Ontario and Quebec, just because that's where the vast majority of U.S. companies come to when they first enter Canada. It really is where the vast majority of the customers are and the money is, aside from a little bit out west as well. But Ontario, so you've got Ontario is basically and the most important part of it is between Detroit and Montreal, essentially. And there's a lot of people and a lot of money between those two cities. But of course, it's a massive province that goes all the way up almost, to the northern part of Canada. The major industries here are automotive, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, professional services, and real estate. But yeah, you could think of Ontario as the finance hub, but also the automotive hub, given the proximity to Detroit.
Right.
And just a little on Quebec to give you an idea. Construction, energy, healthcare, mining, and transportation equipment are very important there. And Quebec really is its own thing. It's a difficult place to do business. If you don't speak French, it's probably good to hire somebody who does, who can do that for you. If you just sell via a website, I don't know the complete makeup of everyone on the call, but if you have a website and you're seeing some sales in Canada, you should think about having your website availability in French and in English.
Right, have it localized.
Exactly. So that's just a little bit about the two provinces. Well, here, your Quebec market approach, and we have an office there, so we're happy to go more deeply into this with you. But yeah, it is a very different culture. It still is Canada. Everybody's very nice, but the culture is a little bit more French, a little bit more methodical, and yeah, the French language is very, very important. And you don't want to just go in there and acting like it's going across the border to Missouri or something like that. I did want to mention a couple of really big areas that we see a lot of growth, and that, you see this in the news, so this should not be new to you, but a little bit about critical minerals. A lot of that is related to supply chain security. A lot of it here is related to electric vehicles. You've seen, I think today, the Ford is doing the launch of the F-150 Lightning. And I mean, it's really the way that the whole industry is going. The problem is we need all the minerals that go into the batteries, for example, and go into everything else we're making in the U.S. But Canada is a very big opportunity and a strategic partner for us. So there's all these mining projects coming up in Canada that provide really good opportunities if you produce, manufacturing equipment, anything that goes into developing and operating a mine. And if you're a service provider who just knows how to operate well in mines, so it's something to keep in mind. And do reach out to us if you're interested in the opportunities. We've also done a lot of webinars on the opportunities in critical minerals in Canada, so we have a lot of information to share if this is of interest to you. And we're doing now, for better or for worse, the Arctic is slowly warming up. So there's a lot more focus on trade in the Arctic and on development in the Arctic. And here in Canada, there's also a lot of opportunities for clean tech companies. So there's mining opportunities up there because of critical minerals, but there's also clean tech opportunities because of the First Nations, the Indigenous folks who live in the Arctic. And the Canadian government is actually spending a lot of money to try to help maintain clean water in the Arctic, water and sanitation. So, and there's a million more opportunities there, but the Arctic is becoming more and more of a topic these days in the trade world. and I don't need to go into those details, but some things you can find on our website. So do check us out, trade.gov/Canada. We have a country commercial guide that's nice and searchable. It's a really massive document that goes into all the sectors, regulations, standards, and more. So do take a look at that if you have questions about doing business in Canada. Events, we're always doing lots of really interesting events here. So if you keep an eye on our website, you'll see those. Or if you send me an email, you want to be on our mailing list, I'm happy to include you. And then yeah, these are our contacts. So we're as I said before, we're across the country. We're here to help. We really do want to see you be successful in the market, and we want to be part of your success. But really, we want to see you add more jobs back home. That's the reason we're up here. That's the reason I'm very proud to do what I do, and I'm very proud to be with all of you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. That was a great presentation. I do also want to highlight for you that the Arkansas District Export Council has a significant list of different resources that you can utilize to try to acquire information, like the one that Martin provided. Export.gov is another really, really good one, but we've got dozens of different resources available that you can do research. And of course, the District Export Council is here to be able to help you along the way with and try to answer any questions that you might have. As Jonathan stated at the very beginning, we're highly connected to the export and import world. And if we don't have the answers, we definitely know someone who can help you with any topic under the sun. So please feel free to contact the Arkansas District Export Council and myself if we can be of service. Also want to make sure that you have access to our email address. Heidi Whitman is our administrative coordinator, and that is her email address if you have any questions from us. And that is some additional information on Martin and myself and the District Export Council and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions, who once again is the sponsor of this series of webinars. And they are there to help any manufacturer from A to Z with any issues. If it happens in the manufacturing world, Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions is there to help you. All right. Well, I think that I guess the last thing that I want to say is that the recording is going to be available within 48 hours of today. And so, you know, obviously a lot of information was covered, and it's unlikely that you were able to write down all of it. And so you will have this resource available. And Martin, did I understand you correctly that you're going to make your presentation available to people as well?
That's correct. However you want to do that, if you want to make it available, or I can, but either way, you can definitely share that with the participants.
So what we'll do is we'll make that available to everyone that registered to the webinar, and so they'll have that resource, and along with other additional information you all need. Please feel free to contact either Heidi and or myself, and of course Martin, for very specific questions pertaining to Canada. I think at this point we will close the webinar. Thank you so much for taking time to attend, and I hope that you found this informative. Thank you again, and we will be having the Doing Business in Mexico on May the 12th. And so be looking for information pertaining to that particular webinar, our other very close trading partner that's under the USMCA. And we hope that you will attend that webinar as well. Thank you again, and have a great day.